Hey, that was quick. We're live.
Yes, we are. Welcome to the Psychic Coffee Shop. I'm Aeson Knight. Of course, with me is my co-host of the mostest, Techy Joe. And we have joining with us Rebecca with her new book, The Agreement. For you guys that haven't seen Rebecca or maybe connected with some of her books, she's a great medium. 25 years experience there. She's also starting the channels and stuff. And let's go ahead and bring her centerfold. And there we go. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Very broad question. In this current human experience, I'm based in Perth, Australia, and I was born and raised here, but I've lived and travelled all over the place. I spend a lot of my time travelling, except for this year, of course, like everybody else. I'm an intuitive. I'm a channeler. I'm a channeler mainly. That's what I'm known for. I've been doing that for about 25 years and running retreats and seminars and workshops around the world, and bringing mainly for the last 10 years information around the shift that's happening for the planet vibrationally, energetically, what that looks like for us on a daily experience, and always new and interesting.
Well, yeah, it's always interesting for channelers. Can you give us a little bit about what that is? Because, our audience are used to me being psychic and tarot readers and that mediums. Channelers is one of those newer terms out there.
Yeah, and I think even the way we're looking at channeling these days is changing. The context of our world is changing. So look, actually, interestingly enough, the first time I ever channeled, I was doing a tarot reading for somebody. I was playing with some tarot cards, and I was 17, 18 years old. And for me, how that spontaneous experience happened is I suddenly felt extremely expanded. And all of a sudden, it wasn't my voice anymore. And there was it went for about an hour. It felt like a few minutes. And there was a whole lot of information around this person who I was doing this spread for. Very in depth about their lives and what was happening for them. And that was the beginning of it for me. So it wasn't really a plan. It did disrupt my life a bit, I have to say, because my brain started working differently afterwards.
Right.
After many years of learning how to be able to integrate being a channeler into your everyday life. So it's not something that's beyond my control. I don't call myself a trance channeler. It's almost like changing gear on a stick when you're driving, so I can move in and out of it very, very easily, which is why, that's what I do now. And my understanding of it has changed over time too, because I think when I first started channeling, in a very metaphysical sense, I used to think of, another consciousness or entity coming through me and speaking through me. And certainly vibrationally, I would feel very different. But over time, it's really become such an integral part of me and what I do, that it's almost like just moving into a different stream of consciousness within myself. Right. And that's how I teach people to channel.
Oh, cool.
So the first time it happened, it's kind of an accident sort of moment. Like, what's this? What was the process like getting from, okay, this is new and different? What was that process to kind of go, okay, how do we make this happen? Or what happened with that?
Right. Well, I can tell you that when you're 18, you're not really too interested in being disrupted like that. I mean, I had some background and context in spirituality. I started meditation classes when I was a very young child. And so I was quite versed in, esoterics and metaphysics, but actually I wasn't interested in going down that path at all. So for me, I was studying at university at the time. I had a great love for beer and pubs. This is back in the early 90s. Grunge was big and all of that. So, I kind of really wanted to have a fairly normal life at that point, but it wasn't working out that way for me. And I think in the beginning, because it was so full on, and it wasn't something that I felt that I was being able to direct consciously, it could be very disruptive. So, going into a crowded room, or, a pub or a party or a shopping mall, and all of a sudden, everything, it was
I'd say I'd say there would definitely be a moment where you're sitting there, like, shove it in the closet, slam it shut, just like hold it, like, no, we're not doing that right now.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Totally. And alcohol was a problem for that. Actually, I've never partaken in recreational drug use, but alcohol was a problem because, of course, all of your defenses come down, and boom, there you go.
Right.
Not very practical at all. So I had to make some lifestyle adjustments over a few years, and then eventually, what the most difficult thing I think I found was my age. Was really kind of against me in that whole area of expression. I think it's much easier these days for younger people to be able to stretch and grow and learn with their psychic experiences. But back then, for me, and certainly in Australia, anything to do with spiritualism or mediumship or anything like that was really reserved for people who had earned their way there. So, we're talking about much older people who'd been in spiritualist churches for many years, all dressed in white, wearing crystals, and, you know what I'm saying. And it was very
there, and it's like, because I was that bratty kid that got took along to these things.
Right.
And it's like, oh, pretty toys. Let me play with them. And they're like,
yeah,
go sit down.
Yeah.
Go sit down.
Right.
I find, were you tired after the experience? Because I know with me, I'm working on opening the mediumship door, and it can 3 or 4 of them will exhaust me. But line them up, I'll clear 40 readings and be perfectly fine.
Well, this is one thing I learned along the way too, is that I can be very selective, and now I only work with a particular team of masters. In the beginning, it was open slam. I didn't really have the skill or the discernment to be able to work with a frequency that was resonant with me, or even more expansive than my own frequency. So in the beginning, yes, it was certainly disruptive because, it's like picking up the phone, who's on the other end. And particularly, and I'm sure a lot of mediums who work with, the astral or people who have passed away or fourth dimensional realities, it can be quite heavy because you can bring all of the emotion and all of the cellular memory of that energy into your experience. So I learned pretty quickly how to be very selective about the frequency that I work with. And because of that, channeling for me is incredibly invigorating. I can have a headache or feel really unwell, and go into a channeling session or seminar, and it's actually, I've come out feeling fabulous. It's rejuvenating for me, which is
yeah. Do you find that before your seminars, which I want to talk about some of the cool things you're doing with those, that there's like a moment where it's like Rebecca mode, and then all of a sudden it's professional speaker clicks on, and it's, totally on point, and like, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, we ain't discussing this, and I ain't taking no for answers?
Well, that's pretty much how it happens. And it really, when I move into that mode, I guess for people who are entertainers, for example, and I certainly don't classify myself as being an entertainer, but I have heard and read about people who are entertainers who suddenly they switch into gear and they almost become a different persona. And it is like that for me. There's a fearlessness, and any question that can be thrown at you, it can be answered so beautifully and so eloquently. So for me now, I mean, when I first started doing this, I used to get so nervous because this persona would be like, oh my God, I don't know anything about this topic. And what happens if, I can't answer any of these questions, and oh my gosh, look at all the people in the audience,
Mm-hmm.
But now every time it's a complete leap of faith. It's a complete, I never know the content's going to be. I usually don't know what the title's going to be until I change the PowerPoint 30 seconds before I start streaming a channeling. It's totally flying by the seat of my pants.
Yeah. For me too, because it's like, I get questions about cars. I have not a clue. You put gas in it and you take it to the garage to get oil put in it. That's all I know. And it's just amazing when you click into that dimension, that vibe, that wavelength, whatever title we want to stick on it, some of the stuff that'll flow out of my mouth. And it's like, did you just tell that person to like burn his shit?
Which he actually, did recently in a on-air reading.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here like, I cannot believe you just said that.
Well, igniting transformation by the sounds of it.
Exactly. So tell us about your new book. Because this is your first one.
Sorry? This isn't my
first book. This is The Agreement. For those that are going to your website. Tell us about The Agreement.
So The Agreement I'm super, super excited about because The Agreement is not just information that's current for now, which is a lot of the channeling we've been doing over the years as being what's happening right now, what's happening with the body, with the vibrational frequency of the planet, what's happening with the shift. The Agreement for me feels like a very deeply embedded philosophy for living in the earth reality. And for me, it's timeless. I think that the concepts have preceded where we are as a humanity, and I think that they're going to be relevant for eras to come as well. So I'm really, really excited about this book because there's so much in it. It's not a quick read. No. It's something that you really have to take your time with. And with much of the content that we hear from the masters coming through, it kind of unfolds itself like origami. So you can read something once and there's a shift of consciousness that occurs, and then you go back and read it again and it has a completely different meaning to it. Mm-hmm. So it's very layered. I'm pretty excited about it.
I thought I could just like sell through these, because normally it's like, yeah, I've seen this concept, I know this, what you got next. This one, it's going to be one of those that I have to throw and, pick back up in a few days and pick back up in a few days. Let's get used to camera, Aeson. So this is the book. It is just, maybe about an inch thick. You'll think you can kill this in 2 days if you can speed read. You can't. But that happens with a lot of master information. It's that energy of the words, but also what the word means now versus what it means to you later type information. That's why a lot of people can still go back and read a lot of the original writings from different channelers or different mediums from the 1820s and 1830s, and it has a totally different view, but it still applies. How did you start with this? Where did this come? Let's take it back a page. What are the masters, or who are the masters in your view?
Okay, so the masters, in my view, have also changed over time as my understanding and wisdom has changed. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, when I first started bringing through the wisdom of the masters, and oftentimes now they come through as a group energy rather than individuals. It really depends on the content and the weight of the content as to how much frequency is behind the delivery of it. My view of them is they've had incredible experiences of life and of being human on this planet, and no doubt beyond this reality as well, which enables us to have views from both within the human experience and beyond it, looking at it. Because, sometimes it's good to get from a distance to get that macroscopic view. So, we have Germain, who many would know as Saint Germain, Serapis, who some people would know as Serapis Bey, and has had many other experiences in this reality as well. And then Kuthumi, who comes in, came in last actually in my channeling experience. I think it's important that they're able to identify as having human experiences and have mastered those human experiences, because it's one thing to get a lot of esoteric and spiritual information. It's another to actually be able to ground it into our current human experience. And I love the way they're able to do that. Like they have a humor,
right,
from time to time.
And they are very serious. And sometimes I feel like that when you're working with master energy, it can be very heavy, very serious. And then at other times it's like, you need to stop using sugar. That is just annoying me. Just don't use sugar anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Very direct.
Yeah. Because I think sometimes people put them up in robes and, this very huge wing-bodied view of them. And sometimes they are. And then other times it's like, no, they're just like your best friend having a full conversation and going, now look up here.
And I love that you made that point. And I think it's such an important point. Because, I think for so long, concepts of hierarchical spirituality have kept things beyond reach for us in our experience. And as I mentioned before, my understanding of these aspects of consciousness known as the masters has changed because it's a daily experience for me now, and also because many people that I have been in retreats with, workshops, done personal sessions before, afterwards they begin to sense and feel that stream of consciousness and wisdom emerging within them as well. So it's like a collective availability to more. And I think, we really understand that we're all connected to one source, to one consciousness. We start to realize that it's less about bringing something in that's beyond us, and it's more about bringing out something that's within us. And it just makes it so much more accessible. Like, I'm a great believer that anybody can channel.
I agree.
I understand it's an inherent capacity that we have to bring things out. Yeah. Out of the human.
This one is kind of a different question, but also the same. Why do you think the masters are being masters? Especially with so much transmission going on now, and they're going on 300 years of transmission, documented transmission.
Oh, well, I think a lot more than that. I mean, we're talking more than 300,000 actually years. And I think that everything now that's happening on the planet, it hasn't happened before. So what's happening now is, yes, we're coming to the end of a cycle, but when we've come to the ends of cycles of experience before, we just move into another cycle of experience, and the blueprints and the patterns for experience are the same. So we go back to completion, and then we have another round of permutation of experience again. What's happening now is we're actually moving out of the mechanics of a cycle for the Earth reality, and that's what hasn't happened before. So we're coming to of completion, but we're about to start a whole new dimensional reality. And what that means is that we're not just going to have another round of, well, we know how this works now in terms of karma and cause and effect and timelines. We're actually moving into a completely different experience. And what makes it so incredible is that we don't have to have a physical death for it to happen.
Right.
So there's a flooding of consciousness coming back to the planet now as part of that end of cycle, so that everything can come back and burst forth in a new way. So I think that's why there's so much information, and the masters are so prevalent in the information that's being given at this time. And I think that for many channelers on the planet now, the information is getting very, very specific, and it's getting very, very explicit. And I don't think we've really seen that before.
I don't think we have. I also don't think that we've seen a lot of the experiences going on. And I do think, however, that where we were having a lot of older souls going, nope, I done been through that trip. I own the videos of that trip. I have the t-shirt. I've been to I've been through all this. I ain't coming back. That was a nice vacation spot. I'll stay in this realm. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of new births of old souls again.
Yeah, and I think that, that's not just from the cycle of human consciousness, or as we've understood it, human consciousness. I think that the Earth is actually going to be reinstated as a galactic Garden of Eden. So I think that there's a lot of aspects of consciousness coming from other places that are ready to come and actually start creating again, because Earth, as the masters talk about in the book, is really designed to be a creative reality. And creation is always about diversity and attention to detail. And here we are in a world where everything is encouraged to be repetitive, consistent, with attention to detail. We're just manufacturing, experience now. And so this great reset, we're going to require a lot of different frequencies from a lot of different places to get that diversity happening again.
Yeah, and that planetary change is going to happen to bring it back to Eden status. So how would you describe the 3D versus 5D?
That's a big question, but let me just make it super, super simple. 3D, everything's about cause and effect. Everything's based on a cycle, which is a cycle of perpetual motion. That's your 4D, which your 3D is tied to. To make anything happen in 3D requires a donation of energy. It's like pushing a ball up a hill. You've got to charge up the energy, you've got to donate it to the ball, and the ball moves. And that's how the mechanics of how everything works. So everything takes a lot of effort. Everything takes time. Everything has to be a consistent effort. And everything moves in a circular pattern. So on a 3D grid, you can only move sequentially, one step at a time, which is why we're so, I'm going to be daring and use the word indoctrinated to think that we have to have a plan and we have to take steps towards goals and be very consistent in putting energy into creating anything. When we start, and also you've got your karmic cycle there, it's a cycle of perpetual motion that you can essentially never get out of. No. It just keeps going. So when you start looking at 5D, we actually start moving into, instead of the donation of energy, we start moving into resonance. And, some concepts of quantum physics and sciences are starting to discover that actually this is how it can work. And indeed, this is the nature of this dimensional reality and beyond, where it's about holding a frequency for something. And then the experience and the creation for that shows up because it starts to agree with your frequency. And indeed, this is somewhat what we talk about in the book, The Agreement. So if you're trying to create something and you're vibrating with your own sense of vitality and life, you're not having to donate any of your energy for something to happen. Now, if you think about the systems on the planet that we live in, the economy and our governance and education, we're constantly encouraged to donate energy to them to keep them running. through effort and participation and money.
Mm-hmm.
We have to keep contributing something to get something.
Right.
That's the exchange. When we move into fifth dimensional reality and beyond, your greatest gift is your presence and your resonance. And then things start to show up for you that are in complete agreement and resonance with that. And that's how we start to create. So it's a completely different platform. And that's, in essence, as I can best describe it, the difference between 3D and 5D.
Well, you described them very well, and you know how that is happening. How do you think it's affecting the human experience?
Well, I think, if we look at 3D as a room, you've got 4 walls, you've got a floor, you've got a door in that direction or a door in that direction. You can either go forward or you can go back. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the human experience, we either move forward into our lives based on the choices we have, or we regress. When we start talking about 5D experience, it's now no longer about backwards and forwards or future and history or limited potentials for experience. It opens up a whole new bunch of doorways. In other words, you walk through one door and now there's suddenly 10 doors you can choose from. So for the human experience, and for many of us, it's more choice. And it's more choice for what's possible. We're not so prescribed what our potentials in life are. We don't have set pathways based on where we've been, because remember, that's 3D and 4D with the karmic cycle. We have to finish this before we can start anything new. You suddenly have real choice. And that's something we really haven't had in humanity for at least 300,000 years. Since the very rigid systems of where you can go and what you can do have been.
Right. So tell us about where you started within this book, and maybe some of the things that we start covering in here, because this one talks a lot about where I've gotten to so far is talking about the energy and how it's changing and connecting with our biology and understanding it. Where does it go to next for, where does it go to? Where is it tying up into the spiral?
So for the physical experience?
Well, physical, but also metaphysical.
Okay.
Yeah, because, we're seeing a lot more psychics, a lot more mediums, a lot more people coming in with that reality already clicking in. I mean, I'm before COVID, and we'll talk about that in a minute and how that's teaching us something. Met an 8-year-old that blew me away with mediumship. And, when we were growing up, that wasn't heard of.
Right. And yet it's a part of our inherent human capacity. And this is really, third dimensional, fourth dimensional reality has limited what we can access of our true capacity. And our true nature is multidimensional, because that's the nature of consciousness, and we are of source. So within the constructs of our human reality, within that 3 and 4D dimensional fabric, it's limited what we can access of our true capacity. So our bodies, we consider themselves to be third dimensional. Perhaps we consider our minds and the way that we think and our thought process to be third or fourth dimensional, because that in itself is sequential. When you start looking at, what you call psychic capacities, or being incredibly intuitive and seeing beyond what is physical or thought constructed, we actually start to see life for what it really is. And these senses and capacities are what's coming back online now. And the reason we see them in very young children is because very young children haven't yet been taught to train their thinking and beliefs towards third and fourth dimensional restriction. They're wide open. And then what happens is we bring our focus to these systems of sequence and time and step by step. And that's where all our focus and attention goes. So children naturally have this, of
Mm-hmm.
course. I think what's happening now is that the collective consciousness on the planet is swelling and increasing to such a magnitude that it can no longer be contained by a third and fourth dimensional structure.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're really pushing the boundaries of that right now. And I think many, many, many people across the planet are waking up now to their inherent capacity because we're not so constrained.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that's why we're seeing so many younger people taking off and doing more things that like 30 and 40-year-olds are like, I could never do that. I wasn't allowed to do that,
Of course. And I think that's so fifth dimensional, because in fifth dimensional reality, well, if you think of 3D as a square-based grid,
Mm-hmm.
you can go this way or that way. Fifth dimensional reality looks more triangular. So you can have a point of reference on a map, and then you've got multiple directions that you can move out in all at once, almost like a starburst. And then you move to another point, and then you've got multiple permutations from there. So
Mm-hmm.
the potential possibilities for movement are exponentially expanded. Now, what does that look like for young kids these days? It looks like, attention deficit disorder. It looks like you can't focus on one thing at once because your focus is here, and then it's here, and then it's here, and then it's here, because you're creating these multiple pathways of potential every time you shift your focus and attention. And that's so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
So in terms of like you're talking about, as like we're kind of hitting a tipping point, I guess you could say that we've gotten there. But is this something like people should be trying to emerge out of themselves, or is this more something that's going to just kind of spontaneously happen? Because I'm still kind of back where like your channeling was, and it's like, how do you also see this working for the world, for the people that this might hit, and it's just like, oh God, put that back in the closet,
Yeah. Right. Well, I think that's such a great question. And I think, we're seeing this across the board right now, where it's very difficult to trust anything that's going on outside of ourselves at this time. When you don't know what to believe, don't believe any of it, believe yourself. And there's a natural folding back into our own sovereignty at this time and beginning to trust ourselves. And that really only happens when you realize that perhaps you can't rely upon the systems of belief or information or knowledge that are sitting beyond you. You start to listen to, well, what's actually happening for me? So collectively, this is happening anyway. I think that how it's generally happening for the population, and I like to call it a kind of an unhooking from external ways of thinking and an unhooking from external sources of information, because that's what intuition is. It's bringing out the internal sources of information, the internal wisdom that we all are expressing, and that we all are in our true nature. Now, how that begins to happen for many, many humans that are waking up at this time is that they start to lose their sense of identity. And that's usually the first step, or the first experience, is you start to feel very disillusioned with what you're doing. You start to feel like you're having less impact. This isn't really having a lot of effect. I'm still putting out the same amount of effort. Nothing's really happening anymore. What am I doing wrong? And then it moves into, I'm disillusioned with what I thought my purpose was. I'm really starting to lose a sense of the value of my role in this society. And I hear this from all around the world with people that are waking up. And for them, it feels like an absolute crisis for their own existence. But in essence, it's a reinforcement for their own existence, because where we get to is, I exist of my own right, with my own wisdom, with my own capacity. But it can feel like a death. It can feel so painful to unhook from what your value to everybody else and the rest of the world is. What many will call the dark night of the soul, before you awaken to your own sense of truth and your own empowerment, that's what's happening now right across the world. I mean, you think about how many people lost their jobs or become disenfranchised with what's happened this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely an unhooking and returning to what's really, really of value, but it can feel incredibly disorientating and stressful.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, and I think I'm sure for you, you probably know people in your lives and friends and relatives and colleagues who are going through this.
Right. And what I find interesting is that return to, and I've seen it all over the globe, doesn't matter where it's at, America, Australia, England, that return to mindfulness, slowing down, disconnecting from internet. In March, and I know it's different for you because you're in Australia, but in March we had trouble getting seeds because so many people were gardening. We've had trouble getting jars to can in or to make candles because people went back to that natural revitalization of things. I mean, granted, the economies suck. The government's yours is doing much better than ours, I have to say.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
Really?
You might not be hearing about what's happening in Australia, but it's pretty intense down here right now. Nobody can come in or go out, and it's been like that since March.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Yeah, but I'm sorry, that was a smart move on your government to stop travel and to get some things moving. I mean, you guys are having much better numbers. But where do you see Corona fitting into the fifth dimensional plane? What are we supposed to be learning here?
Well, I think it's a follow-on from what we've been talking about, really, because there's nothing like enforced separation and enforced isolation to get you to actually return to your own sense of sovereignty. And it was interesting because the Masters, we do a seminar at the beginning of every year with the themes that are going to be coming up for the year. And this year they were talking about sovereignty and nationalism back in February, that there was going to be a move towards sovereignty and nationalism. And at the time, I didn't really understand, the context of that. But of course, we can see that now happening politically and economically. But what's it doing on the personal level for us? Because it's making us back to our own importance. We are important. Our voice is important. What we know and what we feel is important. And to trust that.
Were you part of the group? Because I try to keep up with what's being said and what's vibrating. Were you part of? There were two camps. One was thinking, world going to collapse. The other one going, world going to transfer, and you guys can either come along or we're dragging you along. Which camp were you and your masters in there?
Well, I think we've been talking about this for so many years. I mean, we started channeling about this back in 2009, that this unfolding was happening. I have to say that from a personal perspective, I didn't think it would happen so quickly, and certainly not in this particular manner. But it's happening right now. So we've been hearing about it for a long time. And in response to your question, I would say both, because I would say that there is a complete collapse going on now, and it's a collapse of who we've been encouraged to become as humans. But in essence, it's a complete reinstatement and rejuvenation of the original human design. And we're designed to be creative. We're designed to have freedom of choice. We're designed to be able to access the wisdom within ourselves and bring forth amazing things into this world. And we haven't been able to do that because we've become so distracted and so caught in a system where we're continually donating energy to a system that doesn't support us. And the system is, in my view, and in the view of many at this time, stretched at the seams because it doesn't actually contain and continue to maintain the caliber of consciousness that's on the planet right now. I mean, if you think about an electrical system, for example, if that's powered by electricity, that electricity has to not only have a circuit that stays intact and has to be maintained and repaired all the time, it also has to be at a certain voltage, right? Because if you put too much energy into that system, it's going to blow up. And how I see this is that humans have been positioned in this circuit board to continually to donate energy to keep this third and fourth dimensional reality going. The consciousness on the planet swelling so much with, humanity waking up. Whether or not you see that as an increase in population as well, that could be a factor, I suppose.
Right.
It can't be contained anymore. So the system starts to stretch. It will then try to contract to maintain itself. But ultimately, it can't. Our consciousness cannot be contained. I mean, that's cosmic law.
Right. So have you seen a lot of what I call it as natural rhythm starting to return, where humans come out of this 9 to 5 and they're now either working from home or not working or adjusting, and their bodies and mental consciousness start shifting and starts changing to where maybe they don't wake up at 8 in the morning. They wake up at 2 in the afternoon and start riding through to like 6 in the morning. And around 3 o'clock in the morning, after they've gotten all their, what I call check boxes done, then they start getting creative and start really keying in.
Right. That's a fantastic point. And look how much more creation happens when we're not stuck in an artificial cycle of operation, an artificial rhythm of constant donation of energy. All you're doing then is maintaining something. You're not creating anything new. But I love what you say there, and I think it's such an important point. And I think for people to understand that when we've been existing within a cyclical motion of life, what it's meant is that not just our days and our routines are managed in this cyclical way, where we peak with energy and then we have to go to sleep again, but also our emotions. Also our economy, money, rises and falls, things are up and things are down, and we can predict the patterns that things are happening. What's happening within fifth dimensional reality is that we no longer have a cycle of life, we have pulses. So there will be spurts of vibrancy and energy throughout the day, and then times where you're completely wiped and you have to nap. It's exactly the same with your emotional intensity. You'll have bursts of anger or bursts of enthusiasm, and then it's gone. There's no gradual rise and fall anymore. And so for those of us who are experiencing that, and there's a lot of the planet right now, the majority, I would say, at this point, it's easy to think that you're becoming erratic, or that you're becoming unpredictable, or that you're unstable in some way. But what's actually happening now is you're starting to honor the natural pulse of the planet, because the planet pulses. And that's what humanity is now reverting back to, is this pulse of energy and creative enthusiasm. And then you'll have periods where you don't want to do anything. You don't want to talk to anyone. You don't want to take any action. And yet if you're so used to being in a system where you have to have consistent levels of output, you can have a very bad view of yourself if you're not operating in a consistent way anymore. So it's good for people to know that if you're inconsistent right now, you're actually moving into a more natural rhythm of operation.
Right. And that's important to point out, because we're hearing a lot of things about how you've got to and I'm sorry, I've taken so many business classes, I'm ridiculously tired of them. You got to be up at 5 a.m. and hitting Instagram at 6 and doing this and doing that, and now it's like, no, not really.
Well, I love that. You're a brilliant example of a new human. And I love the way you're honoring so this is sovereignty. You're honoring your natural consciousness and what it wants to engage with and when. And that's actually way more efficient than trying to artificially produce something on demand.
What has been your most surprising moment during Corona? Because, some have been very surprising for me and others have been like, duh.
I think the most surprising thing for me is watching how difficult it is for humanity to return to common sense.
I agree.
And I say common sense in terms of what actually feels right.
Well, we talked about awakening and how that can be unsteady. What are some of your viewpoints of signs that people are awakening, like on a single person basis?
I just love your questions. I love it. So great, because the questions I wouldn't have thought of to ask, but they're so important.
Right.
I think that as a sense of irritation. And see, this is very opposite to what people think, because often people think when they're becoming more conscious, or there's a word a lot of people like to use, ascension. We don't like to use that word. We like to use the word descension, because the more conscious you become, the more you are here. It's like bringing more consciousness into your physical reality. And that doesn't always look like I'm feeling really expanded and everything's sunshine and roses and rainbows. In fact, it's actually usually the opposite. And so as you're starting to awaken, for most individuals, it's incredibly disruptive. And it's disruptive because you start to become quite irritated. You can start to become very impatient. You can start to become very disillusioned. You can question your own value and worth. You start to have a lot of physical symptoms. Your sleep starts to go all over the place. And you can honestly feel like you're losing your mind, because everything that you believed was important in your life suddenly doesn't feel too important anymore. And so a lot of people have what we were speaking about before, actually, this crisis of identity that starts to happen, because your identity really is like an eggshell. And as you start to become more conscious and embody more of yourself, the cracks start to appear. So quite often people start, the cracks start to appear because they're outgrowing themselves, and they do all sorts of, courses, and they get, help externally to try and keep everything where it is, or maintain their lives, or get coping skills. And it's inevitable that shell's going to crack open, because, there's a chicken that's got to come out. There's new life.
Well, not only that, but I think for me, when I see people starting to wake up, their life goes to hell because they get tired of it. It's like bad fitting shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned physical symptoms. What are some common physical symptoms there?
So, I mean, and look, these have changed over time. I used to work in a medical clinic, and one of my roles there was because I can see the energy field and what's happening within the human body with the energy centers. And what I do was create drawings and map. And I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these, of people who were coming in with all the same symptoms. And they would come in over a 3-week period. Everyone would come in with heart palpitations. The next 3 weeks, people would come in with sore feet, And when we started mapping the energy systems, we could actually see that the entire meridian structure and even the chakra system was changing. So because that's happening as the frequency of the planet is changing and the magnetic signature of the planet is changing, so everyone that's feeling heavy and overweight right now, understand that we have increased our sense of gravity, and so our mass is increased. So that's something. So right now, what's happening in the last 3 weeks, there's another wave of heart palpitations at the moment. A lot of people are having that right now because there's a changeover from the electric to the magnetic system that's happening within the heart system within the body. We got a lot of jaw and upper neck discomfort at the moment, and a lot of people are also experiencing numbness in the arms over the last week as well. So I'm very fortunate. I get a lot of people sending me symptoms from the over the world, so we can start to see what's happening. But every time that happens, it's because there's an upgrade happening within the body that's now allowing us to more easily use our physical bodies as part of an information superhighway. If you think about the internet, how computers are all connected, our brains are actually designed like that.
Right.
And we're starting to see that come online, which is why the intuition and people are becoming so much more telepathic. I'm sure you're experiencing this, that now you think about your friend and your friend calls you or messages you, because we're becoming so super connected now, and our bodies are adjusting to that.
Very much, I agree, and I'm seeing a lot of jaw problems. I just went recently through dental surgery. We've seen all that all occurring. When people start feeling or hearing or seeing the masters, because they're all encompassing, depending on which pair of sunglasses you have on. What are some signs that you've noticed from not only yourself, but also the people that you work with in those very early stages?
Sorry, signs that you're going to be channeling? Is that your question?
Or signs that you are channeling? Like for me, it sounded, in my head, it's like, I don't know why the heck do you keep gossiping to me about the person over there? I give a little bit about that. I'd give anything about them.
Well, I've looked from, and because I've got friends around the world who are channelers as well,
right.
And I think everybody it's slightly different. Some people hear something and then relay it. Other people, it's a feeling and then they interpret that feeling. For me, it's really something coming out of my mouth and me noticing it afterwards. So it's almost like I'm listening to another conversation that's happening. That's when I'm, fully in the presentation of something. I'm just another person in the audience listening to it unfold. Something that's more spontaneous, like, for example, now if something was starting to come through, I'm listening to it after it's come out. So there's not, in other words, the wisdom, which I believe comes from our cosmic center, which sits somewhere between the heart and the solar plexus. There's a pathway where that can come out of your mouth before it's actually run through your brain.
Well, as someone who opens their mouth and says stuff all the time, that it's like, why? Oh, why did those words fly out of my mouth?
And I bet you're at your finest when you're unedited like that.
Oh, it's never been described as my finest.
Well, probably the most impactful when you're like that.
Oh, agreed.
There was one incident a little while back that we were at an event. I'm not a reader. He's doing readings at this event. I was actually doing photos at the event. And this couple sits down in front of me, and just something about their facial expression, I opened their mouth and said, you don't have to look like you just caught him cheating. And he hears, because he's just in the other room, and he comes out afterwards and he said, what?
Don't ever say that.
Don't ever say that. And I was like, what are you talking about? And like, I shouldn't say this, but she did. And like, it was one of those moments when I said it, I'm just standing there like, why? Why would you say that, Joe? Why? Why would you ever say that to someone? Because these were like a couple's photo thing. And I was like, okay, over here, just gonna like pretend I didn't just say that. Oh God, let me die.
Yeah.
I know when I first started doing personal sessions, I used to really, really get quite nervous about what was going to come out of my mouth. And sometimes I would try to stop it, and I would try to catch it and say, we can't say that because you don't know that. And you shouldn't say that because what if it's wrong, back in the early days. But after a while, I think you just learn to go, okay, whatever. I don't, my brain doesn't know a lot, so I'll just put it to one side.
Right.
Well, that's kind of like a couple of years ago. He was doing an event, and like, I swear to God, every girl who went, or every woman who went through that line left in tears. And I'm just looking at him like, what are you doing to these poor women?
For about a year there, I
what they just heard, I can't do anything about that.
Okay, so we've kind of hinted at you do personal sessions. What else are you up to? Because you're not just an author; you're a very busy person.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I am a little bit busy, but I like it, and I feel very blessed. It's been a long journey to give myself permission to just do the things that I'm interested in, because I'm a single parent as well. I've got a teenage boy, and I think anyone that moves into an intuitive way of working every day is a faith. And I think for me in particular, talking about fifth dimensional operation and being multidirectional and just doing what feels right in the moment, you really have to walk the talk to be a demonstration of that. So it's been a challenge for me personally, to live that, because you never know where the next inspiration is coming from. I can't plan things very well. One of the things I've been given feedback about over the last 10 years is, well, why don't you book trips and events a year in advance so we can all get organized and come with you? Whereas I tend to do them very, very last minute. We're going to Greece in 4 weeks. Does anybody want to come? Or we're going to run this seminar and it's going to be next week. Because when you're really listening from intuition, life tends to be very spontaneous. And that's a very trusting way to live. So I do a lot of online seminars. I'm doing one at the moment on natural law, actually, and how that works in our Earth reality. I've often got those going on through the website. Look, I used to travel a lot. I'm in the States a couple of months of the year, and Europe, but obviously this year I can't do a lot. And one of my favorite things I love to do, actually, is how we were talking about how all of the energy centers in the body are changing. Well, you have to, it's a question of scale. It's important to understand that if they're changing within the body, they're also changing on the planet as well, because there are corresponding points on the planet. And so what I've really enjoyed in the last 4 or 5 years is traveling to places on the planet that aren't really even on the map yet. And discovering these amazing sites. So I love that. That's pretty cool. Makes me feel like Indiana Jones at times.
Well, that's the fun part. Have you studied how the molecular pattern of what they call the world grid is changing their points by a little bit?
Do I have an understanding of that?
Have you studied or gotten information on that yet? That's been an interesting thing, is watching where people are starting to move to buy their bioenergy. Like, you'll have people wake up one morning and just move to Texas.
I love that. I'm very careful not to read other people's information just because I like to stay super impartial. But I remember doing a channeling about 5 years ago where the masters were talking about how the way people choose to vacation and live will change based on the frequency points on the planet that align with them at a certain time. So I love that you're talking about this, because that's very interesting to me that's popping up now in the world. That's very, very cool.
Oh, absolutely. And we've lost Aeson for just a second. I'm sure he'll be right back in. But so I guess I keep getting stuck in this cause and effect thing, and maybe that's like, I'm not there yet, I'm not ready yet. But it just keeps sticking in my head. Like, is this just a natural progression? Like, I'm going all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a natural progression. This is what would happen, or is this more like a symptom, like a cause and effect? like our world like went in a direction it really shouldn't, and it's just having to rebalance. I guess I keep getting stuck there as to
yeah, as to why.
well,
Excellent.
yeah, like it sounds like a very major shift, and
It is a major shift because when we're in cause and effect, let's just take a moment to consider that it's like being in a hall of mirrors. It's this infinite loop. There's action and reaction, and that's where we get our systems of contract and exchange from, even to the extent where we're in relationships, and it's all about what can I express to this person, what can I learn from this person. So it's like this endless loop, and that's where the karma comes in. We can think we're resolving things, but in essence we're going back and forth, and it's this perpetual loop that we're in, which is great because then things get really, really, really reinforced. But let's bear in mind that the third dimensional reality is a system that's continuously reinforcing itself, which makes it very difficult to move out of. The only thing that's going to move consciousness beyond that is consciousness itself through an expansion of frequency. So if you consider, for example, the sun and the solar system as we understand it, the sun, which is a star. Now, we all know that we're, in essence, stars, and everything in the universe is made in a very similar way. So the sun itself, its light shines out in every direction, which is multidimensional. Now, it's shining its light towards the planet. It's not worried about what its effect is. And it's not actually trying to create an effect. It's just doing what it does. It's just expressing itself. So the sun at no point is saying, geez, I'm a little worried about the humans down there. I think they're getting a little bit crispy right now. I better back it up a bit. I better be mindful of the effect that I'm having. Or if I shine more, I'm going to be able to light up Pluto. Stars don't operate like that. They exist of their own right, and they express, and that's their gift to the universe. Now, we don't see ourselves as suns, or stars. We see ourselves in this system of cause and effect, which means we become incredibly mindful about where to step, what to say, how much energy to give out, when to pull back, because we're always thinking about the effect and the impact. And look, I understand that's a very humanitarian way to think, but at a certain point, it's not really in alignment with cosmic law and who we are as stars. So I think if everybody really began to express themselves in their fullness for who they really are, everything would just kind of line up where it needs to be. I mean, it's the planets that align themselves to the optimum distance around the sun to get what they need. The sun's not trying to make sure the planets are all in the right place or adjusting itself because of the distance that the planets are to it. So that's a really simple illustration of the difference between cause and effect and, fifth dimensional and beyond reality, where we're really focusing on expressing who we are as beings and trusting that when we do that, everything else moves into exactly the right position.
Yes. Well, and I kept sitting there going back and forth with it. Like, no, everything has to have a cause and effect. Like, I'm one of those logical brain people, and I'm like, okay, but she's sitting here telling me, no, it doesn't. Like, expand your mind, man. And I just kept getting locked there. But I really like that explanation that, that our suns, our stars don't have a cause and effect. Like, they have an effect on things, but it's not by their own voluntary choice. They're not choosing less and more and greater and to move 3 degrees to the left and, freeze out the humans and,
Right. It's not strategic. It's not strategic. Now, you think about, giving a psychic reading. If you're giving a psychic reading for somebody, if you're so concerned about positioning yourself or how much information to give and when to pull back, you're very concerned about the effect that you're having with that. And it's totally different from just sitting in your openness and just being largely unedited.
Mhm.
Now, the interesting thing is that when you're concerned about effect, you're more likely to create a karmic tie with somebody.
Mhm.
You are to just do your own thing and move on, and you're not really thinking about it afterwards.
Right. And you bring up some good points there, because warning, I don't edit, she doesn't edit. The only reason I told Joe never to say that again was I just cover that. I don't want them thinking that I'm sharing, because I never share client information about it.
And I think that had to have been a moment for them, though, was that like they had literally just walked out.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no way. Like he would have had to have been whispering in a microphone to an earpiece to me for me to have known what they had just said to each other. But at the same time, it was just so bad, and I felt so bad. And he's sitting there like, oh, I cannot believe.
Well, that was a different reason, because you are my resident atheist. That took a year to realize that yes, he will have a flat tire there. That's why he keeps stopping.
Because, well, and to share with you so that you understand, we make this reference a few times on the show, is that we used to live separately, and as he was driving down the same stretch of road, every time he went through there, he's like, I got to pull over. I think I got a flat tire. I've got to pull over. And it's like, honey, you don't have a flat tire. It's just a stupid stretch of road. And then a year later, we broke down with a flat tire right there. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm never going to hear the end of this.
And you haven't.
And I have not heard the end of that one.
But that is what happens when we step out of that cause and effect cycle, that time linear cycle. And a lot of psychics and channelers and mediums get stuck in this out of time sequence of events or memories or thoughts, especially when they're what I call open channeling or open writing or open, what day is this? Is this, Tuesday or Wednesday or blur day? We've been having a lot of that. How do you deal with that in your everyday?
With stepping out of time like that?
Yeah. Or when you're channeling, and I don't know, a friend of mine used to be a channeler, and she'd be up for 5 days and didn't even know it, because she's just been at that time typing.
Yeah, I mean,
information.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that in terms of my own personal life, I have a very varied experience of time, as probably you guys do at the moment. Sometimes it seems like so much happens in an instant, and other times it feels like it's Groundhog Day and nothing's happening. Again, I think that's the pulse that's happening right now. Remember, time is linear, and as we get cause and effect and we get into the pulse, it's much more sporadic, our experience of time. I know that when the masters come through and bring through time references, I mean, they never used to be really into, well, in this amount of weeks, this is what we're anticipating, or in October, this is what we're anticipating. But they're certainly doing a lot more of that now, which is very interesting to me, that they're becoming more specific with time. To me, that's an indication that we're moving in and out of it. And so it's far easier to be able to pinpoint things now. But certainly the experience of time is changing, don't you think?
Oh, I agree. Our Monday was like 3 days in one.
Yeah, we had a whole conversation about that, because he looks at me Monday night and he's like, it's Monday, right? And I just had this feeling yesterday where I was like, yes, it is still Monday. And it just came out of my mouth, and I'm like, I'm not angry at you for asking that. I just feel like it has been such a long day. It just, oh my God. Yeah, it's still Monday. I don't know how it's still Monday. It feels like it should be Friday or, 2021.
I do think that this shows us that we're beginning to operate beyond time now, because time is actually an afterthought now. You know, we're doing things and we're creating and we're expressing, and then we're going, oh, well, how does time line up with that? And quite often it's not lining up with that. So that's highly indicative that we're beginning to create beyond the restriction of third dimensional reality, because we're not as bound by time in how we are operating. So it's a great, if you're keeping track of time, it's a really good sign, actually.
Right. So are we at the doorway of the fifth dimension in your view, or are we still sitting in the middle of 4 looking at the door going, is it left, right, blue, purple?
In our view at this moment, like this week, the collective human consciousness has moved to a fifth dimensional frequency. Collectively, it's happened. The tipping point has happened. There is still some residual attention and focus on the third and fourth dimensional structures, because it's what people know. But it's their attention that's keeping that going, not the bulk of their vibrational frequency. So there's not a lot holding that together. And that's why it's more difficult for us to engage with it. It's more difficult for us to want to engage with it. And we're seeing that collectively across the world, the systems are being stretched. Systems are going to be replaced. All of those new systems are already in place. So it's not that they're going to collapse and we're going to go to nothing. We're going to transition to new ways of doing things. And that's, in my view, a lot of what we're seeing happening this year. But because of all of our attention is still on what we knew, that still continues to exist for us. But there's not a lot of investment in it as much anymore. A lot of people are becoming very disenfranchised with wanting to invest a lot of energy and focus on where they've been. Not a lot of people wanting to go back to where they were.
I don't think a lot of people will go back to what they were, to the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, picking the kids up from cycle, soccer, and taking them to ballet. And I think a lot of people, when we get through this transition, will be really examining, do we really need an office building that covers 5 miles and have to pay $2.2 billion for it? Or do we just need a really good IT department that can keep us running and focus us? Or, do I really need someone here 9 to 5, or do they just need to pop in at 9, give us a report, and go home and do whatever?
Right. And it's not just the time that you're investing in that. When you're in a routine, like, you're running around collecting the kids, or you're in traffic, or you're commuting, or you're having your lunch break at a certain time because that's the time you're allowed to have lunch, you're in an automated mode of operation. Your brain's running the show. Your body's just going along with it. Where's the creative consciousness? Where's your presence? Where's the inspiration? You're so distracted by maintaining a routine that you're not actually really showing up. You're not really there, of course. Not a lot of new things are being created. I mean, the creative geniuses on this planet are the ones that are not in routine, do not have set requirements for their time, and are not expected to donate energy consistently to the maintenance of something that's already been created.
For someone that's new to you and new to your authorship, is the agreement the book they need to go to now? Grab that one as your first copy, or maybe the New Human Experience, or the Game of Purpose? Which one's your what I call starter book?
Look, I think for a starter book, look, everything's about resonance. I mean, I think a lot of people pick up the agreement because it vibrates in my hands when it picks it up. There's so much in it, but it's not a quick and easy metaphysical read, put it that way. It requires a lot of time, probably. Right.
And it reminds me a lot of Madame Blavatsky's writings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the New Human Experience is more about, on a very practical level, what the system change between 3D and 5D is, and what that looks like in terms of your life. So that's a great foundation book to be able to come. And certainly if you haven't been introduced to the Masters before, that's a great way to begin to understand the changes that are happening now. The agreement is in my view, a far meatier read, which is really about the principles of reality and the principles of life and how it actually functions here as a mechanism. And because once we can understand that, we can actually start to use our capacity and say, oh, okay, I get it. This is how it works. I get that I can create and actually bypass belief to be able to do that. So, you know, there's some interesting views in there that will be new to a lot of people, but are very, very powerful.
Right. And what about the game of purpose?
So the game of purpose, I with the Masters, brought to the world earlier this year to address exactly what we were talking about before. For all of the people who are waking up right now and suddenly realizing that they don't have a sense of purpose, because what we're conditioned to do is when we lose our purpose is to go and quickly find another one, go and reinvent it. And quite often that can be another form of distraction rather than allowing you to deeply sink into the grandness of who you are and bring that to the world. So that's a really beautiful little book. It's got gorgeous illustrations in it to assist people who are in that experience now of feeling pretty disillusioned about who and what they were, because it's just gives you a different perspective on what purpose is.
Oh, I agree. I've not gotten to read any of these. I'm still working through this one because it has a lot of what I call old world principles, old world ideas, a lot of physics in it, a lot of micro metaphysical physics, and I think that it really takes on that higher notch. I really enjoy the book. If you're very much a metaphysical reader, you can hop into it. The other ones, you're going to have to chew on it. And, you know, like you said earlier, it's one of those books you read, you put it down, you come back 6 months, check it out again, and see where your thoughts are. You're doing one seminar now. Do you have anything on your pegboard that you're going to be doing more of, Rebecca?
Oh, there's always more, but I haven't got anything scheduled right now. But if you jump onto my website, actually, and you just, as a free subscription, you'll always get emails as to anything that I'm running. I also do monthly channelings up on YouTube that are free. I do a free newsletter with the Masters bringing a message every month as well. So there's loads and loads of free resources on the website. There's videos and transcripts.
And of course, you're at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, but mainly our listeners need to go to RebeccaDawson.net. That's RebeccaDawson.net.
That's Rebecca, Rebecca.
Double C.
Double C. Get that double C in there. Otherwise, who knows where they're going.
Well, that's like you handle the vanity.
I know, you took over my Vanna role.
Like
I turned the letters.
And your social media, dear, is it all the same?
Like I'm on
your YouTube.
Yeah, Rebecca Dawson channeler on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. You'll find me, and there's links all through their website to those media platforms as well.
Okay. And if they would like to get a private reading, they can get that from your site also, right?
They can. All available there.
Yeah.
So lots of resources for you.
Yeah. And you're able to global? Like they don't have to be in Australia?
No. In fact, most of my community is beyond Australia.
Cool. Awesome. All right, then. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Come out when you come out for the next book. Come on back. We'll have coffee and talk about it, because I know that one's going to be a lot more detailed.
Probably. I've so enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You have a great day, darling.
You too. Thank you.
All right, let's get us back up where we are. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, Shannon. Oh, we got a question. We'll get to that.
Yeah, I started to read some of the question / comment, especially there at the beginning, and then I was like, I don't think that's related to our guest.
No, I think they're used to, just taking readings and stuff. And when we have guests, we don't do the reading part.
Well, yeah, we don't interrupt the guest for that. Sorry. So Melanie, if you're still here, we'll get to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we try to give our guests a lot of room there. Sometimes we do like insert some reader question or viewer questions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
That was kind of interesting. And I just have to say though, like my biggest problem, and for those of you who are Patreons and got the newsletter, the only thing I'll say against her book is I hate the cover. Like, it just looks so plain.
Well,
like trying to fit that on a page, I'm just like, really? Like, that's it. Like, there's no, like, I'm used to a lot of the books that we get are very, like, really nifty covers. And this one just seems so green.
Well, it reminds me of a lot, and it's actually what it is. It's a lot of a study. If you look at some of like the other books that are on my bookshelf, their covers are very, contextual. And, very much, black covers, blue covers, red covers, solid textbooksy style covers. And that's what this one is. This isn't a pickup, book that you just jump into. This is one you have to go in and dissect. Kind of like, what is it? It's on your shelf over there. Chinese numerology.
Okay.
Yeah. I had to think of what book I've read, because you have some that I'm like, not in 100 years.
Well, and then I have some, it's like, how do you own this? And that's actually one of them. That was your first question when you saw it on my bookshelf is, how do you own this?
Yeah. Why do the atheists have, meditation?
Numerology. I'm like, I don't know. I think my sister got it for me.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I guess I expressed an interest at one point or said like, oh, I think that's kind of cool. And so then I had a book and I hear that, or see, I have this moment is sometimes we have a conversation and I go, oh, that sounds really cool. And then I'm in a bookstore, or used to be back when I bought real books. Now I'm a Kindle boy. But used to go like be in a bookstore and be like, oh, we were just talking about that.
Right.
Cool. Oh, and it's in the bargain bin. Awesome. Because I'm that kind of book shopper at times, is like, oh, we were just talking about this and it's like $3. Sweet.
Well, that, and I really enjoy, when we started looking at your lovely, lovely book collection, that I had a choice of decursing books.
Well, yeah, there was a long time there.
Yeah.
There was a long repressed childhood there. Lots of Vacation Bible School. If it can be, painted onto bisque, I have painted it onto bisque. Like, I'll just say, not well. I've never done it well, but I have painted tons of things on bisque. Built it out of popsicle sticks. I built it out of popsicle sticks. But yeah, no, it's yeah. The things you do to get out of your home.
Well, and you have, from what I call the little minor cursing, the little tiny book, to the, okay, you've annoyed me enough major book that we have to take out of the wooden box to use.
It's not a wooden box. It's a very nice presentation cardboard.
Yeah.
It's not a wooden box. But yeah, you could certainly bless the heck out of someone with it in the box. I would consider it a weapon if someone broke in the house. Like, it's my first line of defense. Grab the Bible, throw it at them, and run.
Uh-huh.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but no, it was interesting, and looking at so many things that are going on now, and looking at the agreement, it's like, okay, we've been here. Yeah.
Well, actually, that was kind of the point you were making. No, we haven't. We have, but like this is something totally different.
Right. But what I'm saying is the human conscious existence has seen this happening for well over 300 years.
Well, there's that, as well as like it makes me wonder about like the last like couple of decades, because she was talking about like 2009 was when they started getting like some more like so to speak, when the seismic activity occurred in the field.
Right.
Of like there's something major about to happen.
Right, and a lot of people pointed it at the 2012 and the Mayan calendar. Well, guys, the Mayan calendar ended. 4 days later, that calendar restarts. Kind of like with us, 2020 will end at 11:59.75 seconds, and 2021 will begin at 1/1/21/21.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got lost in the numbers, but
yeah,
no, I think it's an interesting concept, at least, if nothing else. It just that we have kind of seen our world doing this weird, like, destabilize, like, I don't know, like, I kept likening it back, and we've talked a lot about my experience working for a debt collector.
Mm-hmm.
And there was that kind of moment there where at one point, like working there, I'm realizing how much of that whole business was a lot of numbers in a computer system that didn't really exactly tie to something.
Right.
That, like they're sort of tangible, but they're so variable. Based on, do you have insurance? Well, what kind of insurance and what rate did we negotiate? And, can we charge for that or not? Or how do we charge for that? Like, and that was just like one part of that industry. And then like having credit card companies that were literally trying to collect thousands of dollars from people who applied for a card and never used it. And just sitting there like, this is mental. This is like, what am I doing here? Like, why are we like, this is crap.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do this to people? This is just crap.
Right.
But yeah, like that was kind of where my mind kept going, and how many businesses are kind of that.
Right.
That it's a lot of like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? What is the value of this? Why are there so many layers of abstraction between people in charge and people dealing with people? That kind of thing, that middle management and the layering that's occurred.
Right.
I just, as a theory,
I'm shuffling cards.
Yes, sorry, I went off on a tangent.
No, you're doing fine on your tangent, but if we look at your life pattern, because after that you went to take care of your grandmother and do a what I call a reflective period, because not a lot changed there other than you going through that pattern of taking care of grandma and exploring things and that type of thing. And now you're owning your own business, and that's a great example of what I understand the new fifth dimension is it's going to be more you being creative in exchange for your creativity.
Okay. Yeah, I can say I got that.
Yeah.
So, okay. And Melanie, we also do need an actual birthday, and I'm not sure.
An actual question.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, like, because it sounds like you're referencing a previous reading, and unfortunately, we don't keep notes. So, I mean, a little more specific.
Yeah.
So that moves us straight down to Kathy, I believe. No?
Yep.
Yes. So Kathy, 7/28/62. Friday is the last day for the malpractice. Is it still going to happen in time? And if I apply for a full-time position as a medical records clerk with a health company, will I get it?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to name the company. I figure you see it and can work with that.
I still feel the malpractice suit is going to happen, whether we meet time or not. And then when we look at you applying for the job, we have what I call the miser. It's the Four of Pentacles. And when we look at that, it also reflects back with the, what is this? The Eight of Wands. Yeah, the artwork's different. Yes, I am using a different deck. This is the Witch's Tarot. So yes, I think it'll be a good opportunity for you, but I also think that there are other opportunities out there that you're going to have to look at getting. Hey, MG, you're going to have to go back and listen to this one when I post it, darling, because it was a very good show.
Oh yeah, it's been a great show.
Yeah.
Alrighty, and then we have Marty, 12/3/59.
Okay.
This week I have a turning point in my health. I had cancer, which has changed my outlook on life. I want to ask, will I find good news this week about my health? Thank you for your help.
All right. Let's take a look here. Now, please understand, with any health reading, I am not a doctor. Please follow doctor recommendations and speak with your physician. Moving past the make the lawyers happy routine. If you can't tell, I have that memorized.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the upside is I like that how Marty approached her question. Is she wasn't looking for a diagnosis, just like, should I be dreading this? That's what I'm taking out of the question. Is should she be dreading this doctor's appointment?
Let me take a look here. All right. So I don't think you should be dreading this appointment. I do feel, however, that this appointment is going to be one of a lot of distraction. Because we have the Two of Wands, which you're going to have to make some healthcare decisions. We know that. We also have the Ten of Wands, which talks about rounding up your resources. What do you have available to you? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And then the final outcome is the Ten of Cups, which is celebration, harvest home. This points to building and connecting your life to what you really want. I do want to suggest that you work on releasing emotions and stress. I also feel like that you need to offset yourself and just take some time to go and take a deep breath in and figure out, okay, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What do I want in my life? Because I think you, for a while, have really sacrificed a lot, and it's time that now we have to focus on you. Okay, Marty? I hope that helped.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Yes. And I will go back to a comment Shannon made. I missed that one. Covers are expensive if you don't have skills. Well, covers, like cover artwork can be expensive, but in a lot of ways, it sometimes is what draws the eye. And I will say that was, and it also, like when I'm doing page layout for the newsletter, like a lot of times that's sometimes like it's its own artwork. Like it adds its own element to the story. But with this one, I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, we're going to see probably some more of these because whether, yes, they're books, anyone can read them, they're going to vibrate to a specific frequency or a specific type of frequency.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? Feel free to drop them in. I know we're running a little, well, we're getting right about there.
Yep, we're getting right about there. So, yes, I'll take any last minute questions, comments. Anything news-wise you want to talk about, today?
Oh my gosh. Have I even looked at the news today?
How about this week, darling?
I don't know. Like anymore, I keep looking at the news and I'm like, I don't even know if that's like real or not. Like again, also identifying with the author, I keep kind of having that moment of like, this cannot even be real now. Like it's like, did the Onion just buy everything and like it's all satire and just like what the heck? But because it feels like a lot of the articles I read, I don't even know.
Right.
Like I literally find myself sitting here going, okay, wait a second, what source is this?
Right.
Like it's just so weird anymore.
Well, this is a follow-up to a Mountain Bear show. The gentleman that we were talking about got caught.
Ah, good news. Good news.
Caught the two people of interest. Now we get to figure out what else is going on.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
But yeah. And Kathy is making the comment that her medications could have a major effect on whether she gets hired. And
I feel like that's going to be an issue.
Well, it can sometimes be. Like a lot of companies have a real fear around pain management.
Right.
And that's not for necessarily a bad reason, even in an office job. Like, I think a lot of that has to do with not people in pain management as much as people using pain medication, not for pain management, recreationally. I actually worked with a woman that we ended up not only firing, but she ended up getting injured on the job filing. And that was because she literally passed out from the medication she had recreationally taken at work. It was ridiculous. So I can understand that fear. I really can. But there are also a lot of companies and a lot of people out there, and especially like smaller businesses, and especially within the medical field, that understand as well.
Yeah.
That, you know, hey, this is a thing that exists, and like, what are we talking about here? Like,
yeah,
you know, what's the deal? Like, help us understand, we'll help you.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that'll go well in general. All right, guys.
Oh, sorry, Marty. Made that mistake. I'm sorry. We get the little baby image, and it's like really like teeny tiny. So no, I'm sorry. I couldn't tell. I just thought you had gorgeous red hair. That is apparently a wall. Glad to know. Sorry about that.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this show. We will be back on Friday night. Take it away, Vanna.
All right. And of course, we want to thank our Patreon sponsors, Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda Bryant, and of course, the Crystal Lotus Shop at 89 Old Main Plaza in St. Albans, West Virginia. Be sure to check them out if you're in the St. Albans area. And if you'd like to learn more about the show, about us, or about becoming a Patreon sponsor, please visit PCSPnetwork.com.
All right, guys. Good night. Have a great week. Try not to compound it into 3 weeks. And I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Good night, Joe. Good night, everyone.
Good night.